Meanwhile, a new documentary series, The U.S. and the Holocaust, is currently airing on PBS, directed by award-winning documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. It focuses the lens on where the United States fell short in dealing with the horrors of Nazi Germany and the killing of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. Let's take a short look at a clip.
We tell ourselves stories as a nation. One of the stories we tell ourselves is that we're a land of immigrants. But in moments of crisis, it becomes very hard for us to live up to those stories.
The Holocaust was beyond belief. People just disappeared.
But the golden door was not wide open.
Joining us now from the U.S. is Ken Burns. Ken, welcome to the show. And this three-part series focuses a lot on the chilling details that indicate the U.S. did not do enough to help the Jewish refugees of Nazi Germany. If you could explain, please, just how much U.S. politicians, business people, and the public at large actually knew about what was going on.
I think that Americans have had a sense that the just basic superficial common thing is that we didn't know what was going on, and it's not true. There were 3,000 articles in 1933 alone, the first year of Hitler's reign, that talking about the mistreatment of Jews, that we didn't know what was going on, and that what we did is we won the war, and how horrible was that? And it's more complicated, what Americans knew, but more importantly, what they did and what they didn't do and what they should have done. And while we let in 225,000 refugees, more than any other sovereign nation, we could have let in 5 times, maybe 10 times the people, which it would have saved more people from the Shoah.
The release of the Auschwitz report is headline news throughout the country. These news reports explaining to the American people what Auschwitz was and what happened there are followed up by op-eds, by columns about Auschwitz and what America has to do in the wake of all of this information.
76% of Americans by that time believe that it's happening. But then they're asked the numbers. How many Jews do you think have been killed? And Americans cannot grasp the scale and the scope of the crime.
6 million means nothing anymore, Emily. It's opaque. It means nothing. And so you need to particularize it, as the historian and writer Daniel Mendelsohn says in our film. Make each story individual. Understand the missing lives, the missing potentiality, that there are 9 million Jews in 1933 in Europe, and Hitler kills 2 out of 3 of them. So in any picture of 3 people, 2 will be missing shortly.
We're going to take a short break. Thank you, Ken. Please stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We have much more with multiple award-winning director Ken Burns when we return. We're joined once again by Ken Burns. The film also explores the role of President Roosevelt in creating a safe haven for Jewish refugees. Please tell us, how much does President Roosevelt bear the responsibility for the fact that the borders were closed to hundreds of thousands more Jews escaping the Nazis?
There's lots of blame to go around. Not Roosevelt. He deserves blame at times because he seems to us insensitive at points, but at other times he really can't do anything. His wife Eleanor is really fabulous. So the State Department has some implacable anti-Semites. They're raising the bar. They're changing the rules. They're making it harder. So you've got this toxic brew and then prevalent anti-Semitism that makes it impossible for leaders like Franklin Roosevelt to do anything. He sees what's coming. He's not a Führer. He's not a dictator. He's not a king. He can't just wave a wand and get rid of that act. He'd be impeached if he did anything like that. So how you begin to fight it?
Myself as an American, I've always heard inklings that Henry Ford was anti-Semitic, but it's alarming to discover the depths of his hatred toward Jews. Let's see a short video and then explain more about the lengths that Ford went to spew vitriol against the Jewish people.
Anti-Semitism intensified. The automobile pioneer Henry Ford blamed Jews for everything from Lincoln's assassination to the change he thought he detected in the flavor of his favorite candy bar. He bought himself a weekly newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, and used it to spread his anti-Semitic propaganda.
So you see it in the context of the rise of Germany, of prevalent anti-Semitism in the United States, of being seduced by eugenics, a pseudoscience that suggests you could have a hierarchy of races. There's only one race, the human race, and that anti-Semitism was a coin of the realm. It was prevalent. The industrialist Henry Ford was publishing the Protocols of the Elder founders of Zion. You had this Catholic radio priest, Charles Coughlin, who's spewing anti-Semitic vile. It is in economic uncertain times, the Depression, and so people are susceptible to the othering. And what a convenient for millennia, Jews have been for that kind of othering. And you add the racism and the treatment of Native Americans that inspired Hitler. He thought it was great. We'd tame the Wild West. He'd tame the Wild East.
Lawmakers in the U.S. State Department purposely mishandled the Jewish refugee crisis. Let's take a look at a scene from the film, and then please explain to us the story of how Anne Frank is actually connected to this fact.
Several senators and congressmen introduced a resolution calling for a new commission tasked with somehow saving the surviving Jewish people of Europe.
Most Americans hear about the Holocaust, most school kids, through the story of Anne Frank. But she, her diary ends as she's being deported to Auschwitz and then later back to a concentration camp where she'll die of typhus, in early 1945. But her father spends most of the 30s trying to get into the United States, and he's got means. He's got contacts. He's got contacts that know people in the Roosevelt administration. He's got the money, the people putting it up. He crosses every T and dots every I, and he can't get in. Even if you'd filled out the quotas, the meager quotas that were in place in the law, if you'd filled them out, you probably could have let in 5 times as many as the 225,000. So those are all people whose lives we don't know what diseases weren't being cured, what symphonies weren't being written, what gardens weren't being tended, what children weren't being raised with love.
Ken Burns, thank you so much for your time. You can watch The U.S. and the Holocaust, which is streaming on PBS.